Hello everyone. This here is the weekly video for Chapter 10 on blindness and low vision. The first slide, go ahead and download the slide if you haven't already. Give me a chance or pause me and pull that up. You'll notice the first slide has your assignment for the week and also a reminder. If you're in the 15-week or 16-week class, your observation report is due here in about a week or so. So this here, let me jump back here. Sorry, my computer is being a little bit slow. Let me look on my phone. My phone might be quicker. Yeah, week 12. So you probably have about a week or 10 days, somewhere around there, left to get your observation report in. If you're in the 8-week class, you may have a bit longer, but not much. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into it. The chapter objectives for this are pretty simple, explanatory. You're going to be able to state and briefly describe the instructional implications of the 3 general classifications of visual impairments used by educators. You're going to be able to describe how blindness and low vision affect learning, motor development, and social interaction. And you're going to be able to identify the estimated prevalence of children with visual impairments. And you'll be able to explain why it's important for teachers to know about the types of visual impairments affecting children in their classroom. You'll be able to compare the educational goals and instructional methods for children with low vision and children who are blind. And lastly, you'll be able to explain how the educational placement of a student with visual impairments can affect his or her opportunities to learn the expanded core curriculum of non-academic skills necessary for overall success. There are 3 general classifications. You have totally blind, functionally blind, and low vision. So we'll get into that as we start talking about the sections, but those are the 3 general classifications. First question, it's for you to give your thoughts are, what are the instructional implications of the 3 classifications of visual impairments that educators use? So write down your thoughts. What are the instructional implications of the 3 general classifications of visual impairments? So in other words, how might they want you to, how might the teaching that you do affect the different ways, the different 3 classifications? So pause me, write down what your thoughts are, and then we'll come back to the answer and help explain a little bit more about those 3 general classifications. Okay. To go a little bit more into detail, totally blind means just what it is. There's no vision whatsoever for those that are totally blind. For functionally blind, they receive so little information from vision that other senses are primarily used. So they might be able to see blobs or shapes, but they really cannot get enough information to know exactly what is going on. So they're still going to use their other senses, their hearing, their smell, things like that to help them. And then there's low vision. And people with low vision, they receive information from sight, but need to use other senses to supplement that. So in other words, those are students that they may still be able to wear glasses, but because of and we'll learn more about this, but because of the inability to be able to see that well, even with glasses. So that's what low vision is. And instruction should primarily focus on teaching a child compensatory skills such as learning to read Braille and mobility for the first 2 types. For children with low vision, classroom adaptations, optical devices, and large print can be used as assistive technology to support the student when reading or engaging in activities that might require sight. The age of onset of a visual impairment is also an important consideration in programming. Children who have been blind from birth have no visual history to apply to their current needs. So, and those that are adventitiously blind children, on the other hand, have some visual experiences which typically facilitate the teaching of many skills. So if they have had sight in some way, they can connect the information that you are teaching to some of what they remember seeing. Okay? I know one instance, I had a student that, actually two students I'll talk about here real quick. One student was low vision, had glasses and was able to see with the glasses. On her IEP, we always had to mark that she was, blind or vision impaired, and had to add that extra form to the IEP, and wrote in there that, with glasses she could see without, support of, using Braille or things like that. And she did well enough where in the high school, one of the teachers said what I always hate that teachers say is, I didn't realize she was even on an IEP. She looked and acted just like any typical student would. Yes, she wore glasses, but there was not really any other indications about that. So you may not, if you're a regular education teacher, you may not realize that a student in your classroom might be, on an IEP, blind or visually impaired. And that's where it comes down to making sure that you know your students, making sure that you check your, many schools have a system set up to where, a school software system that as you're looking up students, it will tell you in there whether a student is possibly on an IEP or in special education. It might say, if they're on a 504 plan, might say other things in there, but that's definitely something that you'll want to watch. Typically, hopefully, the special education teacher will give you a packet at the beginning of the year that will explain all the students that you may have in your classes that are on an IEP or in special education. Another student that I had also used glasses, but still needed large print. So, when he was in special education, the paraprofessional, if the special ed teacher needed some, was doing worksheets, the paraprofessional was asked to go ahead and enlarge those. So one worksheet was actually enlarged to where that became 4 sheets of a document, and the paraprofessional would go through that. They copy the item, and then they tape them together, and that way he or she would be able to look at the same worksheet as others. Now these days, hopefully it's not the paraprofessional that's doing that. Paraprofessional should not be your office worker that does that. That should be your job to do that, which they did put a stop to that after a while, but that's how it started. Also, for your understanding, large print books are pretty large. A typical book, I'll take this one here as long as my other books don't fall down. This here is the old book, the 10th edition of the Exceptional Children. I still have one over here. And you can see the thickness. If we had this enlarged, it might be about this much taller and probably about this much wider. Okay? And that would be with just one volume. A typical book of about that size might actually come, when you get it in large print edition, it might come in 4, maybe 5 volumes. So for that one book, the student in your classroom may have 5 different volumes of that size. Typically, the school can reach out. The prisons actually do make these books, but there is a location that most districts call, and they will give them the name of the book, the edition of the book, and then over the summer you would get all of the books. So typically what would happen is, at least in the high school realm, we would find out what classes the student had signed up for. We would then email all the pertinent information to a service. They then would in turn go ahead and get the books out to us over the summer in a big box. We would keep that box, and then at the end of the year, we would then pack all those books back up and send them back to that service. So, but anyway, thought I'd give you a little background on that information. Nowadays, they also can just use computers. A lot of computers have the enlarged print. I know this kiddo here, when they were in middle school in 4th grade, there was a device that was about the size of a little bit bigger than a standard student desk that had to be in one of the teacher's classrooms that the student had, and anything that was on a worksheet or anything like that that maybe you didn't get a chance to get enlarged or was not able to get enlarged, the student would utilize this device to enlarge that book so that they could, read or read along with whatever it was. Once he got into high school, we actually had a computer set up in the library that was automatically set up to have everything enlarged, whether they were going to the internet, all of the icons were enlarged, all of the print on the internet that was looked up would be enlarged. So, technology has made, in that case, has made it a lot easier for students to be able to see that information. The legal definitions. The legal definition is based on visual acuity and field of vision. So a person whose visual acuity is 20 to 200 in the better eye with the use of a corrective lens is considered blind. A person whose visual acuity falls between 20 to 70 and 20 to 200 is considered, in the better eye after correction, is considered partly sighted for legal purposes. IDEA defines the visual impairments, emphasizing the relationship between vision and learning. Again, totally blind receives no useful information through the sense of vision and uses tactile and auditory senses for all learning. So it gives you a little more information than what we talked about earlier. Functionally blind learns primarily through the auditory and tactile senses, but still has some sight that can help them a little bit, but not a lot. Low vision uses vision as a primary means of learning, but supplements by using tactile or auditory input. Age of onset. This is where we talked about that adventitiously blind, and then the first one that we're going to talk about today is congenitally blind. Visual impairment is present at birth. A background of learning through hearing, touch, and other visual non-senses are used for those students. Adventitiously blind, their visual impairment is acquired, so a visual memory of things is retained. So they did have some sight. They were able to get some in their memory, so they could get an idea what colors are probably. Get an idea maybe what cars and some typical things that they would have seen around the house might be, depending again on when that age of onset was. And that can help you in the classroom so that you know what you might be able to, what the student might have done before that might help you as you're going through a new topic. Characteristics, cognition and language. Perform more poorly than sighted children on cognitive tasks requiring comprehension or related different items of information, or relating different items of information. This could be impaired or absent vision, makes it difficult to see connections between experiences. That would go right along with your teaching. Visual impairments precludes incidental learning. And abstract concepts, analogies, and idiomatic expressions can be difficult to understand without sight. So think about some of those things as you might be teaching, especially if you were a writing or a reading teacher, as you're starting to describe, as you're starting to talk maybe about creative writing and wanting descriptions, things like that. This may be difficult. Characteristics, motor development, mobility. Visual impairment often leads to delays and deficits in motor development. There are 4 functions of vision in the acquisition of motor skills. There's motivation, there's spatial awareness, there's protection, and there's also feedback. A child without clear vision may move less often because movement in the past has resulted in painful contact with the environment. So, again, kind of take a look at that when you're reading the book. Children with visual impairments, as far as social adjustment and interaction, they play and interact less during free time and are often delayed in social skills. Many struggle with the social isolation, inability to see and respond to others' social signals, and stereotypic behavior. The ability to see and respond to the social signals of others reduces opportunities for reciprocal interactions. So that's another topic that you might want to remember as you're working with your classroom. I got up to another question. How do blindness and low vision affect learning, motor development, and social interaction? We just talked about it. Let's write down a few important topics before we go on. All right. Children with visual impairments approach learning tasks much differently than children who have sight. Visual impairments often hinder much of the experiential learning that one gets from sight. And we talked about that a little earlier, but I want you to remember this part. Low vision also often affects the child's ability to connect and organize different experiences. So if they've had experience in the past and did have some vision, it can affect them being able to remember those. Visual impairments have profound impact on a child's ability to move about his environment. Because of the reduced movement, children who are blind or functionally blind often have slower motor development than do sighted children. Compared to sighted children, children with low or no vision play and interact less during free time. We talked about that a couple slides ago too. These children are often not asked to go to a movie or ball game, for example. However, there is no evidence that suggests that these challenges to learning, mobility, and social interaction restrict the potential of children with visual impairments. There's a slide on incidental learning. I think we talked about that a couple of times already now, so I'm going to let you read that again if you're still having trouble with that. Characteristics, social adjustment, and interaction. Some individuals with visual impairments engage in repetitive body movements such as stereotypic behaviors such as body rocking, eye pressing and poking, hand flapping, and hand weaving. Many persons who have lost their sight report that the biggest difficulty socially is dealing with the attitudes and behaviors of those around them. The prevalence? Fewer than 2 children in 1,000 have visual impairments. Only about 1 in 200 to 250 of all school-age children with IEPs are served under the category of visual impairments. And during the 2012-2013 school year, approximately 28,000 children ages 3 to 21 receive special education services under the IDEA category. So again, it's less prevalent. I know in my years at the school district, probably 1, maybe 2 that I can remember that were visually impaired or blind. Actually, I guess 3, because I did have 1 that was a blind student. So I've had all 3 of those, so I did have 3. Many school-age children with visual impairments also have another disability and served under other disability categories such as deaf blindness. The number is much larger than the data reported for IDEA. Like the American Printing House for Blind reported that 51,974 children from birth to age 21 were eligible for services for visual impairment in 2014. Another question for you to do, I'm going to let you do this on your own. How might the fact that visual impairments are a low incidence disability affect a child's access to special education and related services? So I'm going to let you do that on your own. How we see. You need to kind of have an idea of, let me take this down. For some reason, my computer decided to enlarge everything. Effective vision requires proper function of 3 anatomical systems of the eye. There's the optical system that collects and focuses light energy reflected from objects in the visual field. There's the muscular system that enables ocular motility. And the nervous system converts light energy into electrical impulses and transmits that information to the brain. And then there's how we see. Well, as light passes through the eye, several structures bend or reflect the light to produce a clear image. And it lists the different areas. I'm not going to go into each one, but you should at least have a knowledge of them. There's the cornea, the aqueous humor, the pupil, the lens, the vitreous humor, and the retina. And some of the causes. There's refractive errors, there's myopia, which is nearsightedness, and there's hyperopia, which is farsightedness. There's structural impairments like cataracts, glaucoma, nystagmus, and strabismus. There's also cortical visual impairments, suspected damage to parts of the brain that interpret those visual information. Next, we want to talk about the educational approaches. Braille is a primary means of literacy for people who are blind. Braille is a tactile system of reading and writing composed of raised dots. There's some Braille technological aids that can be used. There's also tactile aids and manipulatives, and technical aids for reading print, and there's also computer access. Now, what I will say is one of the students that I have worked with was a student that primary language was not English. Primary language was different than it was spoken in the home. This student that I'm referring to now also was a student with an intellectual disability. And so there was difficulty. This student had tried learning Braille before, but because of his cognitive ability, I think also put him with his language barrier, that was never able to happen. So this student here was primarily using other forms of instruction with him. So, each student's going to be a little different. There's also specialized instructions for students with low vision. 75 to 80% of school-age children with visual impairments have some potentially useful vision. So that's good for you all to know that are in the regular classroom, and also special education teachers. Children with congenital low vision can view themselves as whole, generally view the environment as stationary and clear, may have a sense of visual beauty, enjoy their visual abilities, and use vision to learn. Low vision offers a different aesthetic experience, and vision is not always the most efficient or preferred method of functioning. Visual efficiency is discussed in the next slide. Functional vision and visual efficiency teaches the use of remaining vision. It encompasses the following skills: awareness, fixing or locating, scanning, tracking, gaze shifting, discriminating, and visual sequencing. And I would like you to look in the book at some of these, get a little more of an idea, because this is one that you will see some of your students needing to utilize. The fundamental premises underlying the development of visual efficiency is that functional vision is a learned behavior, and therefore teachable. Some of the optical devices, imagine you're probably pretty familiar with. There's glasses and contact lenses. There's handheld telescopes and magnifiers. There's monoculars and binocular aids, prisms and fisheye lenses, closed-circuit television systems, and augmented reality systems. So those are some of those ideas. Then the next slide talks about reading print. About 62% of students with vision impairments read printed text. Approaches for reading print for children with low vision include approach magnification, lenses, and then, like we discussed earlier, large print. Other factors to consider are the print quality of the material, the font or typeface, the contrast between print and page, and the spacing between lines and the illumination of the setting in which the child reads. And then I want you to definitely read about the classroom accommodations. Proper lighting, desks with adjustable or tilting tops, writing paper, modified worksheets, and chairs on wheels. Then there's listening skills. Children with visual impairments, especially those that are blind, must obtain an enormous amount of information by listening. 80% of information received by a normally sighted person comes through the visual channel. And I want you to remember this next part very carefully. A listener can process auditory information at more than twice the speed of the average oral reading rate, or about 120 words per minute. With practice, students can listen to accelerated and compressed speech at speeds up to 275 words per minute without affecting comprehension. So, it may be that you would be able to tape your lessons and they could hear it that way. They could have their books on tape, and then the listening device that they use can be set to do the speeds at a higher speed, do the reading at a higher speed. So that's one. Why is it important that teachers know about the types of visual impairments affecting their children in their classroom? Think about that and write something down, and then after you get something written down, go ahead and continue. Well, first of all, knowing the type and severity of visual impairment is of paramount importance for developing an educational plan to meet the needs of the student. Some students with visual impairments require more intensive supports and adaptations to the curriculum. A general education, this is important, can be the key catalyst of failure of inclusion, so you really do need to take this to heart to help the student succeed in your area. Reading print. Strategies for accommodating the slower reading rates of most children with low vision include providing 1.5 to 2 times as much reading time or as much time as sighted children needed for reading, ensuring sufficient time to study and use auditory reading aids, and also allowing extra time on tests. And here's some of the expanded core curriculum that students that are blind or low vision need. First of all, there's orientation and mobility training, or O&M. And this is a person that comes in. I know the student that we had, there was an O&M person that came in about twice a month, sometimes more, and they would work on the cane skills with the student, taking them around the school, making sure that they were holding the cane right, making sure that they were utilizing it well. They could also help with guide dogs. We never had a guide dog in our building, so I'm not sure what that would look like, but orientation and mobility would help train the student with that. There's sighted guides and electronic travel aids that can be utilized. Some of the listening skills: being aware of sounds, discriminating differences in sounds, identifying the source of sounds, and attaching meaning to each sound. And then functional life skills like daily living and career skills. I know one instance that I still remember quite vividly is the O&M person would come in and one time wanted to help him do some cooking. And so she had everything set up. The student was able to do brownies, had everything set up to show how he could do this. And then he even iced it. Did look a little interesting, but for the first time he did quite well, and he was very proud of himself that he could do that. So working with that also. And lastly, how do the educational goals and instructional methods for children with low vision differ from those? And so I want you to look at that and then write it down and then come back. And the basic goal of special education concerns teaching skills for independent and productive living. Academic skills alone will not accomplish this goal, so learning life skills such as cooking, grooming, managing money, participating in leisure activities, and coping with societal expectations are essential parts of any curriculum for exceptional learners. In addition, children with visual impairment should know how to explain their disability to others and to refrain from behaviors such as rocking and head rolling that draw undue and often negative attention to their disabilities. Because most students with visual impairment are educated in regular school settings, it is easy to focus on attention exclusively on academic skills. But it's important to recognize that academics are but one part of a curriculum necessary to prepare students with visual impairments for life beyond the classroom. Placement options. Most children with visual impairments are educated in public schools. 65% are members of a general education classrooms. 13% attend resource rooms for part of each day, while 11% are served in separate classrooms, and 4% attends residential schools. Most students who are included in general education classrooms receive support from itinerant teacher consultants. Most important factor to be successful inclusion with visual impairments is the skilled and supportive general education teacher. That's on there twice in these notes because it is very, very important that you understand that. Suggesting for supporting students with visual impairment include communicate with clarity and respect, and expect and enable independence. The opportunity to be equal and the right to be different is what blind people want from society. Print and Braille are equal but different. The need for independent travel is similar, but skills are learned differently. And concepts and learning requires different experiences for blind people. Next, I want you to do is look at the standards and indicators. So go ahead and go to that. And you've already done this a lot on some of the other ones, so I'm not going to go into that. But that does conclude the PowerPoint slides. As far as this week, remember you have the quiz for Chapter 10, the classroom arrangement for students with vision disabilities, and then also the observation report is coming close. And let me see here. There is anything else I want to include on this topic? Yes, there is. This is a fun one. I thought it was there, but wanted to double check. For this one, I do have an activity for you on your classroom discussion for Chapter 10. It is experiential. I want you to find a partner, someone you trust, and I want you to cover your eyes using a blindfold or scarf. You can keep them tight, or keep them tightly closed. If you're really, really good at not peeking, but really need to do that. Have them take you somewhere outside your own home, apartment, or dorm room. Take a short walk with them. It doesn't have to be far, believe me. Around the block or across campus will do. Then come back to this discussion area and write your impressions of this exercise. Once you get done writing it, you need to do this by Wednesday night. Then I want you to come back, and on this one, I want you to comment at least 3 of your peers. I want you to look and see, because this is exciting. I haven't had anybody get hurt yet, so that's not on there. Don't be the first one there. But yeah, go ahead and do this discussion board by Wednesday night, and then come back and do 3 of your peers on this one. That's all I have for today. You all have a great week.